Today, we're joined by Unmukt, founder and CEO of Trust Evals. Unmukt spent 16 years across Goldman Sachs, JP Morgan, Airtel, and Thena, where he built at the intersection of data, AI, and enterprise systems. Now he's building Trust Evals to help AI teams continuously evaluate production systems they need to trust. In this conversation, we discuss why legacy governance frameworks are breaking in AI, what it takes to manage systems that are constantly changing, and why Unmukt left a working business to build something harder but more ambitious. Unmukt, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me, Rohan.
Well, Unmukt, I think a good place to start is you have a really interesting background with, some big companies that you've worked at. So talk a bit about your journey there and what was the gap in the market that you saw for your first founder journey, and then what brought you to building Trust Evals today?
Sure. As you pointed out, I worked for some fairly large enterprises. In a lot of ways, it is a non-traditional founder path. Working across Goldman Sachs, JP Morgan Chase, Airtel, it was mostly about building systems at scale. I'm end-to-end a data guy. I love my data. And when we started talking about Thena with my co-founder, who happens to be a mate out of school, we basically realized that essentially it is a data problem, right? It's what we were calling at that time a customer data platform that needed to be built. And Thena needed to be the solution that allows you to talk to your customer data platform. That was in 2022. And it was more a case of excitement towards the problems in the product space. I also wanted to try my hand at SaaS because I had experience on B2B, B2C, but not necessarily in core enterprise SaaS. So that was something that excited me. And it was fairly natural progression. Hard initially because it's very different working in a startup ecosystem to, running a team of 100 people where all the resources are at your beck and call. So, part of the journey. As to where Trust Evals came into the picture, I think towards end of 2023, as we started building AI agents for our larger customers, we started to see that there was inherent gap in how the industry currently looked at reliability and trust more broadly in AI, right? I think it's starting to be a conversation now in 2026 after people, especially in those companies where they've sort of adopted AI and are now looking towards building trust in it. But it's a journey, right? You start with adoption, you then think through implementation and making sure that it's unlocking real value for you. And then you start to think about governance and trust and making it a repeatable process. So that's kind of what led me into Trust Evals.
Okay. Well, I think it'd be helpful for our audience if you can just talk about the landscape of, security governance as it relates to like websites and digital information. What is the current landscape and how is it changing? What is breaking in the world of AI, autonomous agents, generative, information and code? Just paint the current state landscape and why things are breaking and where you see the future heading.
Sure. So if you look at GRC platforms traditionally, right, they tended to do...
And can you define GRC?
Yeah. So that'll be governance, risk, and compliance, right? So essentially your folks that help you with your SOC 2 and your ISO and your NIST or any other form of framework/policy that you need to adhere to. GDPR, another beautiful one, right? So you have all of these sort of frameworks and policies that you need, or certifications that you need to get in order to start selling to enterprise customers. But then the other lens of that is you also want to make your inherent pipelines and your systems more robust. So what you tend to do is, as you grow in maturity as an organization, those certifications are no longer enough. Your CISO also wants to make sure that your moat is protected, right? Your systems are protected, and you have put your best foot forward in terms of what you've implemented. Now, in traditional engineering, that's sort of been a science that people have, I won't say perfected, but like they've gotten pretty good at over like 30 years, right? And then AI comes in, and it's sort of really thrown a spanner in the works, in that the way agents work backed by LLMs, it's not the same as a straight through path that happens in engineering, like traditional software engineering, right? Where you write code, and as long as you measure the input, you know what the output's going to be, because like deterministic for the most part. If it bugs out, it bugs out on a certain type of issues, versus AI where it can just go in any direction. And when I'm saying AI, I'm obviously talking LLMs, right? So that's where I think the initial thesis started to form, even for me, is because it's probabilistic in nature, how do you even measure success? Like, what does success look like? Is it if my workflow is running 98% of the time accurately, and when it fails, where does it fail? How does it fail? Right? So it's more of a continuous loop. It's a continuous valuation that you need to do. And I think that's the biggest thing where it breaks today, is people in GRC are used to doing point in time evaluations, unless they are like they have a team of like 200 people and they are only focused on reliability. Then sure, they might be doing more continuous evaluations. But for the most part, people are doing point in time evaluations. But how does that even work with AI? Right? Like, what happens when the model changes? So I did my audit 3 months back, and my next audit is in a year, and there are 3 model changes in between. So are we saying it's okay to sort of measure it once a year? Right? The other point is, I think the space is still, people are still coming to terms with the space. So you have industry level frameworks. AIUC is a beautiful example. Like folks in the industry are coming together and sort of create this AI standard, right, that everyone should follow. But it's still fairly young and gate kept by AIUC to say we will be the ones doing the audit. So it's a good initiative, but it's one. Then you have governments that are building their own. So you had the EU AI Act. I was speaking to someone from the government of Singapore recently, where they have their own AI policy that they are drafting, but it's a catch-22, because you want to draft a strong policy so that your data within a federal jurisdiction remains. At the same time, you want to be business friendly. Right? So you have to draw that balance between what should be enforced and what shouldn't. So I'm giving you these examples because I feel like there's still a lot of maturity that needs to happen even within these individual policies and frameworks and acts before you can truly say that they are at the level where they reflect real world AI usage.
Yeah. Okay. And so now you're building in the space. Where do you see that intersection of what you are building, and given the maturity or relative lack of maturity with where things are at right now, what is the killer app or product that people are resonating with right now?
Yeah, it's a really good question. I would like to break it into 2 parts, right? So in terms of what's going on in GRC, I'd be the first to admit I'm not from the GRC background, right? I think we come at it more from first principles, and I'd like to keep it that way, right? So the way we build Trust Evals, it is a way, the way to think about it is from AI adoption to developing trust in your AI implementation via your control plane. Right? So that means your AI agents, your vendors' AI agents, what tools your employees use. Everything will be within Trust Evals. Everything will be monitored. Everything will be analyzed. We will highlight to you how your sales team tends to use AI versus how your eng team tends to use AI. Which are the policies that you have drafted in AI, and how compliant are divisions and departments and individuals with those policies. What are the guardrails you want to set, and enforcing those? Like, all of that will be done within the control plane. At the same time, we don't want to replace traditional GRC systems. We don't think we're the right people to replace them. So we have the relevant hooks that allow the existing GRC players to pull data out. And if they want to do an AI audit, absolutely go ahead and do an AI audit, right?
Yeah.
But you don't need to worry about capturing that data, analyzing it, classifying it, figuring out where it's relevant, where it's not. We'll provide you all of that.
Okay. Yeah, that sounds compelling. I know you've been, posting content on LinkedIn and some great memes as well, and you've been getting some inbound. So it sounds like you're, earlier in your journey, but what you're writing about and posting about is striking a chord. So talk a bit about, what's happening there.
Sure. Definitely early days. I think my Claude skills keep updating on a weekly basis what's working and what's not. But a few early realizations, right? I think number one, it takes a while to sort of find your voice. But as engineers, especially as founder engineers, you tend to not do that very well if you're not based out of the Bay Area, right? I think it was something that was a giant change even for me, is to get used to the fact that it's okay. Just start putting content out there, start figuring out what you want to sound like and what comes naturally to you versus what doesn't, right? So I feel like whenever I'm truly honest to what I feel, the posts tend to do much better. In terms of how those inbounds are coming, it's so funny because the posts that people have reached out to me are the ones that have like one comment or two comments. And sometimes they haven't even liked it, right? Like they haven't done anything that I can visibly see, and they'll just reach out and go, hey, like, I want to talk to you, and where's your calendar at? And we got our biggest customer through that. My current pipeline, my top 3 customers in terms of ACV are all through LinkedIn content, right? The best part is one of them ended up referring a second customer to me, right? So I do see that there is an opportunity, still again, very early days, but from what I'm learning from people who are way ahead of this than I am, is it's sort of a muscle that you need to build, and you really need you need to go to the gym every day, right? You need to like do your diligence, and the cool part about setting it up with Claude is I'm able to like see on a weekly basis where did I sort of go away from what works for me, and what experiments am I running. So my current experiments are to try and see how much humor in a week is the appropriate one to sort of tip the scales, right? Because it's so obvious that when it comes to throwing out humorous content with a message, it lands much more, right?
Interesting.
But you have to find that balance, because if you then start going down that path, you don't want to be just the person who's like, giving out funny content, but it means nothing. So it has to tie back to the pipeline.
Yeah. I like that. I love that. Because it sounds like, you said you're earlier in your journey, but you just decided to start posting, and it's amazing that you're getting those signals, that inbound. And it sounds like obviously it's a high leverage use of time, given your highest ACV deals are coming from this channel. And this is, you're preaching to the choir right now, because this is what we see the world moving to, right? Especially with AI, and now with an abundance of information, knowledge, and now intelligence. What do people truly care about, and what is going to be scarce? It's being able to connect with people on a more human level, like being more discerning of what looks something AI generated versus what is humor or funny or just like has more humanity to it. And so it's cool that you found this workflow where, it's like AI assisted in terms of your research and like maybe giving you some inspiration, but like a lot of the memes and the ideas and the perspectives are very much in your voice, and that's what people seem to connect with.
I think it's going to be, I was just saying, I think it's also a constant experimentation exercise, right? Like everything else in a startup environment, you sort of have to understand what's working and what isn't, and uh, how to balance out your objectives commercially from adding value to the end user.
Yeah. You made a good point too, where it's usually not the post that gets the most engagement or goes viral that's going to be driving inbound or business outcomes. And oftentimes it is the decision makers and the buyers that are lurking. They're much more silent. They're not engaging because maybe they don't want their network to see what they're engaging with. But yeah, it's driving DMs. And so, yeah, that's just great to hear that you're seeing those early wins and those early successes. Cool. Are you planning to do more like podcasting or getting yourself more out there? Like, how do you think about distribution and shaping their narrative and becoming a thought leader in this frontier space and category that you're building in? Yeah, how are you thinking about building thought leadership and awareness around that?
Yeah, look, I think on content strategy, that's where a lot of current effort is going, is to sort of see what we want to experiment with in terms of messaging. I spoke about the broader GRC space and the fact that it's going through so much from an AI governance perspective, but that's pretty much true even for AI adoption, right?
Mhm.
So our core focus right now over the next 6 months is to make sure that we build a repeatable engine with as little humans as possible, right? And so that means that when it comes to our inbound flows, how much of that can truly be handled by Cloud Cowork as well as OpenCloud, both of which are running in parallel as we speak, right?
Yeah.
And then when it comes to the outbound motions, I think the single biggest focus for us, it's something that we've learned by burning our hands, in our previous startup, is we want to make sure that we really narrow down the messaging as much as we can, right?
Yeah.
Because I think in terms of the space and the fact that our people facing the pain point, I think we are past that, right? But we really want to now nail that one particular portion that if you ask me in the middle of the night saying, who are you and what do you sell? I'm able to articulate that into sentences and I know how to build that notion out to get like 50 customers tomorrow through my outbound messaging. I think that's where the focus is going to be for us. I see LinkedIn as more of a channel where I can continue to do deep discovery. I think we were briefly talking right before about the fact that people in private equity have started reaching out now
Yeah.
saying, hey, what are you doing in adoption? And we are struggling with our portfolio companies. We are getting pressured from LPs. Like those are things you will not hear about through conventional outbound or conventional inbound. It has to be driven by some messaging that you put out there where people went, hang on, is this relevant to me? And let's brainstorm. It might not even lead to anything, but it's a giant insight for us because now what it means is we are creating a separate outbound funnel purely for private equity, where we are focusing on how we help portfolio companies track AI usage, identify where the gaps are, and in certain cases, map them to the roles that exist.
Okay. Yeah. So, Unmukt, you're in a really, I think, interesting position because you're providing a lot of that, not just the implementation and that control plane that you talk about, but education and helping people understand the ecosystem. So we have a lot of, SMB like founders, right, that are listening to this podcast and they're wondering, can I still use my open instance of Claude or OpenAI to do my searches and maybe plug my customer data into, or am I going to start running into governance issues and risk? And yeah, how do I mitigate that sort of risk? So what is a message you have for people around how they should think about LLM usage and when might it make sense for someone to engage someone like you?
Yeah. In terms of, I'll sort of flip that around, right? When it comes to governance and security, the underlying principle is it needs to first create value for you, right? Especially in SMB, is you need to sort of see the value, because only when you see the value will you then care about creating a robust and repeatable pipeline that's secure, right? So I would start there.
Yep.
Is, have you actually got the value that you are looking at from AI? And if you've started to see the value, that is probably the right time to then think about how to make it repeatable, how to bring in more people into your company who are using it. So our ideal ICP as of right now is between 50 to 2,000 employees, right? Because more than 2,000 people, when you generally tend to have your own AI transformation teams that like to do their own thing, right? Less than 50 people, it's very likely that AI implementation and strategy is not your core focus, right? It's more about creating that value. And I think that's the one question to ask is, what's the cost of getting it wrong? That's one of my biggest openers right now is, okay, you're doing this, you've got on a call with me, what's the cost of your AI getting it wrong? And if you can't articulate it, or it doesn't put the fear of God in you, then you're probably not there yet.
Okay. Interesting. What is a common response you get when you ask that question that lets you know that they're ready to have a conversation?
Larger companies, it's reputation, it's the cost of things going public. A simple example is when it comes to biases and models, and if they're related to sex or religion or caste or background of a person, then those are super sensitive areas. CII, PII, data protection more broadly, those are like the obvious ones that come up there. In terms of other use cases, I think the single biggest one is the cost of churn, right? Where you're not able to identify quickly enough which type of customers do you tend to give subpar experiences to. And in terms of internal employees, I think the single biggest one is we are paying 700K. Like, we actually had this from a customer, like they were paying 700K across their 200 people org on AI licenses, and they felt like the value out of it was zero. And when you do the audits, you actually realize that 80% of those employees were using it for email. 10% of them were out of engineers were using it for coding. So it was obvious that there was like a huge training and upskilling that was required, right? But those are things that won't become very obvious upfront. So it's reputation, it's the cost of inefficiency that's becoming obvious, because when you go to the board and the board decide, okay, you've put an X million into AI, what is the benefit out of it? You don't have a clear answer for that. Like, it's time to get on the call.
Okay. Yeah, those are some very painful consequences, right? If people are starting to face that, like, the cost of doing it wrong. Well, this has been super helpful, and I recommend folks follow you on LinkedIn to kind of stay up to date on all things kind of like governance and compliance as things like rapidly shift and evolve. In addition to LinkedIn and the website, is there like a message you might want to share with our audience, and where's the best place for them to reach you if they want to learn more?
I think LinkedIn is the best place right now. It's where I live a lot of the day anyway. In terms of the broader message, I think everyone's sort of learning as they go along in the space. So I'm really curious to hear about the challenges that companies are facing as they implement AI across their org. It could be either vendor-led or internal AI tools, or even upskilling. I feel like there's a huge opportunity in each of them. So excited to speak to people on.
Okay, great. Well, Unmukt, thanks for joining the show today and sharing your insights, and looking forward to following the journey as things continue to grow and evolve. Thank you.
Really appreciate you taking the time. Thanks a lot.